Hello, boys and girls. I am inside of Google Classroom, and there's an assignment posted called Scratch Games. So if I click on here, click View Assignment, let's first take a look at our learning goal. Our learning goal is to demonstrate an understanding of how a computer takes input of data, processes, and stores the data through a series of commands and outputs information. Use a simple visual programming language. Create a program using loops, events, and procedures to generate specific output. Use appropriate terms in conversation. Algorithm, program, debug, loop, events, procedures, memory storage. We've been doing all that in the creation of our first two projects, which was a simple Scratch project, and then we created a game. And in those creations, we used things like events to start our program. We use loops to have our sprites or our objects in our program do things more than once. We've also used variables. What you're going to do this time is create a simple game. There's two examples here. If I click on the first one, this is the ghost game that we created. So if I play this, the object of this game is to click on the ghost, points go up, and the timer goes down. And when the timer gets to 0, the game is over. You can make a game similar to that. Another example is this maze game. This is a simple maze game. And this maze, what you have to do is collect the fruit as you're going through the maze. If you collect anything that is not fruit, you'll lose points. If you collect fruit, you'll gain points. The object is to get to the end, which is this red bar down here in the lower left area. Once you get to the red bar, the game is over. If you touch any of the blue sides, then you lose points. There is also a musical background in this game. So this game begins when I press the space bar. And you notice I gain a point by touching the apple. Notice that the fortune cookie and the cheese puffs, they flash. I got a point. Now I have to get through this fortune cookie before it comes back, which I did. But if you notice, if I touch the fortune cookie, I lose a point. I just touched it again. Now, what I did then is I clicked on the dark blue area. So it took me back to the beginning. And I'll just go as fast as I can to the end. Get past this fortune cookie. So one thing that you could do to add difficulty to this game is you could make the objects that are not food flash a little bit faster. I'll touch that cheese puff, so you notice I touched the cheese puff and lost a point. Now if I just go down to the red bar, so the game is over and I've won. And if you noticed that when I did get to the end, the music stopped. I had something there that said you win. Now I want to show you something. If I press the space bar, everything goes back to normal. The score goes to 0 and my ball goes back to the beginning of the game. So that is a reset feature which you have to have in your game as well. So if I click the space bar, everything goes back to normal. I'm going to click stop right here. And those are two examples. Another example, if you want to have other ideas for what you can do to play the games, is you could go right here to where it says tutorials, and there are maybe 1 or 2 games in here that you can get ideas to create a game also. Let's go back to Google Classroom, and there's a worksheet here. So what we have here are more so directions and a checklist. And what you're going to do is you're going to create a game in Scratch. Some suggestions might be a game similar to the ghost game we created, the maze game that I just showed you, or something else that you would like to create. And you could also use those tutorials in Scratch to get ideas of a game to create. You must use an event to start your game. You must have a variable in your game that keeps track of the score. Your game must have some way to end. So I showed you 2 ways to end a game. In the ghost game, we had a timer. In the maze game, once my sprite touched the red bar, the game was over. You must have an appropriate background for your stage. The background can be any color except white. You must have a loop in your game. This could be a repeat loop or a forever loop. You must have at least one sound. If you noticed in my maze game, I had a song playing throughout the game. You don't have to have a sound like that. You could have something like we did in the Ghost game, where if we clicked on the sprite, it made a sound. Somewhere in your game, you must have a sound, even if it is a sound at the end of the game. Your game must have a resets mechanism at the beginning of the game. And what that means is your game doesn't have to automatically reset at the end of the game, but when the game starts, everything must move to its original beginning position. So if we think of the maze game, the ball sprite moved to the upper left corner of the screen. All of the other sprites returned to their original position, and the score reset to 0. Any color changes or size changes must revert to their original colors and sizes, and once again, the score should revert to 0 or whatever your starting score would be. In the instructions area, the instructions area is this area right here on the projects page. You must type in some directions for the users. So the instructions must include a description of the object of the game and how to play it. Those are the minimal requirements for your game. The minimum requirements will give you an average grade somewhere around a B or a C. If you want to boost your grade, you can add extras. All of the extras must work in order to receive credit. Some extras you could add, maybe add one or more broadcast events. Add more than one variable, such as a timer, as we used in the Ghost game. Add functionality to lose points. So, for example, you saw in the maze game where if I touched anything that was not fruit, I lost points. Maybe if I'm touching a particular color, points are deducted, or if you're touching a particular color, something else would happen. Like in the maze game, when I touched the dark blue, my sprite would automatically go back to the beginning of the game. You could also add, if a certain time is reached, points are either deducted or added. You could add levels to your game. You could add appropriate special effects such as color changes, sounds, animations. Another thing you can do is implement changing background colors. And one other thing that you could do to boost your grade is at the end of the game, add a game over or similar message so that the player knows that is the end of the game. So, for example, in the maze game that I just demonstrated, it didn't say game over, but it said you win at the end of the game. If there's any questions, send me an email or a comment in Google Classroom.